I know that US President Donald Trump has weighed in heavy options against Iran, and he is trying to broker a deal with the Iranian side. Of course, that includes Iran not to have any kind of nuclear weapons. I want to know more from Norman Floyd Barnes.
Greetings from Washington today. It appears through all my contacts is that the United States is staging and preparing for a attack on Iran. There's several different scenarios. We don't know, but it's all based on the issue that the talks between the nuclear facilities and their program has broken down. And in light of the turmoil in the country, it appears that all forces and all indications that in a response from the United States is imminent. So there we go. We're waiting when and how all the pieces are in place. Jordan, the neighboring GCC countries, they are all prepared, and the military is waiting, and the planes are in the air.
It is a very difficult time. Tomorrow, we are expecting to see a federal shutdown as well. We know that the winter storm has taken to the northeastern sides of USA. Of course, it's important to understand how the administration sees. I know for a fact that Secretary Noem is facing a lot of backlash, as well as Bovino, Mr. Bovino, who actually is the leader of this border guard patrol. So I want to understand more from Mr. Norman Floyd Barnes.
Yes, there have been several changes in an attempt to influence and have an impact on Congress, who's prepared to deal with the final agreements on the budget. However, this situation with ICE has stopped everything. The killing of the two American citizens in Minnesota and the tactics used by the ICE agents has brought attention to how we police, how we do things in the United States. The majority of Americans do not have an issue with security. They do not have an issue with law enforcement. They do not even have an issue with the border control issues. But the issues is with the tactics used by ICE and the appearance that the commander in chief is using a bully type of approach dealing with U.S. citizens. Consequently, the Congress, the House, and the Senate representatives are being pressured by the citizens to take action. One of the issues is that the ICE funding and Homeland Security funding actually is directly tied into the budget approval. As you know, we was talking about healthcare last year. The Congress, particularly the Senate, has stated, the Democratic Party, which they need the votes, has stated they will not tolerate the current state of Homeland Security utilizing ICE. They want that funding pulled out of the budget. They want major reforms. They moved the commander back to his position in border control, and they're looking for impeachment of the secretary of that area, and they want a sweeping change to the point some talking about actually repurposing and reshaping and eliminating the actual term ICE. So right now, these issues are being put to the test with Congress. The president and his administration is trying to figure out a solution. But right now, with the vote pending in the next 28, 48 hours, it appears that the government will have a problem going into the next session, and we are looking at a partial shutdown, if they cannot take out the Homeland Security funding from the bill. Even if they do come to a term, the agreement would only last until September of this year. We have to revisit this whole situation. So right now, it appears that there could be some type of hold-up, pause, and some issues regarding the funding for the United States government, uh, all because of this situation, this tension going on with ISIS and their ICE techniques. Yesterday, they made an additional 20 arrests of people involved in the protests in Minnesota. So, yes, there's talk about slowing it down and de-escalation, but the tactics and the actions has not. Protests are continuing and enforcement is also continuing. So right now we're looking at in my assessment, all the proportions and all the conditions for a conflict within the United States between the federal government and the states.
Norman Flood Barnes from Washington, D.C., our geopolitical correspondent. I want to focus on a different angle right now. We know that when the jargon came about regarding Greenland, we've seen the adverse reactions from people like our nations, like the United Kingdom, Denmark, and the entirety of the EU. And ever since then, regarding the narrative regarding Greenland has gone down, and we do not hear about Greenland as much. Before the break, Professor Rezwana Karim was implying about the fact that Danish parliamentarians were laughing regarding this issue. But that is not the story that I want to ask Norman. I want to begin with Keir Starmer's visit in China. And of course, this visit is of a 3-day visit. It is important to understand how the UK-China relationship is going on in the future and as of today. So I want to ask Norman Floyd Barnes, do you think this is a positive time for change for the European nations, especially because NATO was being discussed, the attack or the rhetoric regarding Greenland was important, and EU is now looking forward to other alliances other than the Western alliance. I want to understand more from Norman Floyd Barnes.
Thank you. It appears that the efforts of the Trump administration has triggered a shift in how the world conducts day-to-day business. The tariffs has and the military actions of the United States recently has forced the European Union and other nations to confront its own issues. Stated in the U.S. policy that the U.S. wants to, as moving forward, focus on a Western Hemisphere focus and in America first. Okay, that's the situation has been played out, and so that means, and what that tells the European Union and other people in the world that they must find their own way. The deal with India, which was called the Miller deals. China has already stated that they are there to be the alternatives. So naturally, Canada, other countries that have been affected by the tariffs, is looking for alternatives to do day-to-day business. So what you're going to see, additional deals like what's happening with the mother deal with India and EU, you will see additional coordinations and trade agreements will be done with countries like China, um, Brazil, India, even the EU and other parts. So in this big picture, this is could be viewed as a positive outcome for the future. Yes, right now it's going to be some issues, some difficulties, and even some struggles. But in the big picture, I think the world will be better in terms of dealing, and it was also create a atmosphere of communications, and with that, when you're talking and you're communicating, military conflicts is something that is not desired because we know if there's a war or something like that goes on, the trade and commerce is not flowing. So everybody is looking at alternative or ways of doing business and avoid conflict, both Cold War, hard war conflicts. So this will have a effect on how the Trump administration moves forward. Even though their policy is focused on America first, they will now have to look at the world first. How do we fit in? How do we participate? How we support the situation, and at the same time meet our needs. So other countries are now looking at options. Free trade is a great thing. Free trade will be the idea of the future. And I see, in spite of all of these military and these conflict issues, the option of now neighbors are talking to other neighbors and not depending on what we call the Western or the U.S. way. They're looking at now how we can do our own way and make ourselves more prosperous and at the same time create peace. That is the peace when you can communicate, you can do free trade, you can do business, and you don't have to worry about someone putting a tariff on you or having a military armada breathing down your throat.